okay, the Bears, the tougher and critical part is long since over. They were mathematically eliminated before last night's game even began. I've been meaning to mention this. I wrote about it last night. Stayed up late. I was so excited because we started the fire 2 weeks ago in our draft as to who the Bears should hire. And I threw out the idea of trading for a coach of a current team, and John Harbaugh and Kyle Shanahan were the two that I mentioned. And the more I thought about Shanahan, the more I liked it. And I was on the Score in Chicago within an hour after we were done that day, and I mentioned it, and they were like, hey. I was on with Rich Eisen, and it grew a little bit more. I was on the Score on Wednesday in Chicago, and it grew some more. I wrote about it. And the next thing you knew, it just took off. Like, hey, the Bears should trade for Kyle Shanahan, to the point where John Lynch addressed it, not that he has a say in it. And then Shanahan reaffirmed his commitment to the 49ers after beating the Bears 9 days ago. But last night, thank you, Troy Aikman. Hey, and he didn't have to give PFT Live credit. I don't care. He just said there's been some discussion. Yes, there has, Troy. Oh, yes, there has. There's been some discussion about trying to make a trade for Kyle Shanahan. And he said, I'd be all in on it. So once it's out there on Monday Night Football on ESPN and ABC, now, hey, even if it doesn't go anywhere, the point is made. Let's not just say we're only going to look at coordinators who have never coached before. Maybe they can be head coaches, maybe they can't. We're not going to go get a recycled, fired head coach. We're not going to go hire a college coach who may not know anything about the NFL game, like Urban Meyer. Sorry for the stray, but it's true. It's just an example. We're going to go get a guy who's currently coaching another team, and we're going to try to guess that they're moving toward a natural separation, and we're going to try to get in there before it happens. Why not make those phone calls? Jed York might hang up on George McCaskey. He might rip the phone out of the wall. I don't care. Make the call. That's the point.
And you said it earlier in the show. There's not many candidates where we're sitting here saying, hey, if this team gets this guy, it's two guys, really. It's Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel. So for every other team, like you all can't get those two guys. So they'll be off the board. So then what's your plan B? Like, what do you think to do next? So it makes a lot of sense. If I'm the 49ers, I'm trying like heck to convince him and make sure he stays there. But for Chicago Bears, you've ran on this hamster wheel over and over again, firing coaches, hiring coaches, getting new coordinators, getting rid of those coordinators. Like, it's been the same thing. And now you have this guy, Caleb Williams, who, even though it's been a struggle this season, I think for most people, when you watch Caleb Williams, yes, it doesn't look like Jaden Daniels and it's not Bo Nix, but you watch him and you say, there's a lot of talent there. This guy is doing some things on the football field that you're like, that's special. Not many guys can do that. So you sit there and you're like, okay, how do we make sure? How do we get a guy in here that we know, and you never can be 100% sure, but that we feel really good that this isn't us kind of taking a chance. It's not a huge risk. And Kyle Shanahan would fit that bill, getting him in that building. The guy that had Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, all these different guys look like good quarterbacks and go and play in a Super Bowl. And then he gets to put his hands on Caleb Williams with this talent that he has. So if I'm the Bears, there's no doubt in my mind that I'm calling and I'm seeing what is there. How do we get them? Look at the Denver Broncos. Not the exact same situation, but they went and they traded for Sean Payton and they gave up the assets they needed to give up to get him. And now you look a couple years later, you get Bo Nix, you pair them together. They're going to have a chance, and they should be playing in the playoffs this year just from making that decision of saying, hey, we want a guy that we know has been successful, and going out there and saying, hey, we're going to get Sean Payton. It would be interesting if the Bears say, we're going all in to get Kyle Shanahan, because they already have a good amount of talent on that team.
Yeah, and that wasn't a classic trade because he had stepped away, but still he had time left on his contract with the Saints, and we've seen that a few times. It happened with Bruce Arians. It happened with others, where a guy leaves a team, takes a year off, resurfaces. That team still had an existing contract, so they work something out. Not nearly like the 2 first-round picks and $8 million in cash that the Buccaneers gave the Raiders 20 years ago, but they won a Super Bowl with John Gruden because of it. So there's merit to the idea of picking up the phone. Maybe things have soured with Mike McDaniel and Stephen Ross. Ross gave him an extension before the season. Maybe after this season he decides, you know what, there's a ceiling not just on Tua, there's a ceiling on McDaniel. And so maybe the Bears would want him. John Harbaugh, that was the first name I thought of when I thought of this, because it it just feels like every once in a while, every few years, the way things end, is it time for both to go their separate ways? It's amazing how long he's been there, since 2008. But you make the phone call. I'm not saying he should be, would be, could be, but you make the phone call because you want that coach that you can pair with Caleb Williams and get the most out of him. They were talking last night about how Darnold has learned so much with Kevin O'Connell that when you're in college, you just learn how to run your offense. You don't learn how to properly break down a defense, figure out their tendencies. How can we attack this team? That's what you learn in the NFL with the right coach. And, think about what Caleb Williams would be with Kevin O'Connell coaching him. So they need to find a guy like that. So you either roll the dice on somebody who's a coordinator who's completely unproven as a head coach, and maybe he can do it, maybe he can't, or you make the phone calls to the available coaches out there with other teams and see if you get lucky and you can find, if you're giving up a first-round pick, if you get your coach for the next 10 years, it's worth it. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.